What up, friends? It's Morphin time, and today we're going to be reviewing STAYC's debut album, Metamorphic. Like I said before, this is the debut full-length album by K-pop girl group STAYC. I actually first discovered STAYC all the way back in 2020 with their debut single, So Bad. It was a really fun synth-pop and dance-pop oriented tune that set them apart from their contemporaries at the time. Over time, STAYC have transitioned from that debut shimmering sound into a sound more reminiscent of a group like Weekly. They began opting for more of a sort of trap-infused synth-pop sound, also kind of dabbling into contemporary R&B here and there too. The quality of these releases haven't always been consistent, but they have always been pretty fun on the whole. The Stay Dom single album alongside the YoungLove.com mini album were definite highlights of their discography, while I will admit that the Stereotype mini album and the We Need Love single album were a bit of a dip in comparison. They weren't bad on the whole, but they weren't really capturing the STAYC charm that I kind of liked about the group to begin with. Even their next single, Teddy Bear, didn't wow me all that much. However, I did think that things started to turn around starting with their Teen Fresh single album. That single album showcased some fun and funky pop sounds that sounded a bit more fresh and had a bit more of an identity compared to what they were doing in that lull period before then. It felt more in line with classic STAYC, and with this new full-length project, their debut full-length project in fact, it largely continues the things that I did like about STAYC's old sound, alongside incorporating some new elements to it as well. However, I will say that there are some moments where we kind of go back into that lull period, unfortunately. Granted, I will give them credit, this is a pretty meaty project, 14 songs, definitely not going in that 8 to 10 song route that a lot of K-pop albums are going for these days. But, the first leg of the project is very solid, the last leg of the project is also very solid, but it's that middle portion that we really need to talk about. But before we get there, like I said, the first leg is pretty solid, and I think the intro track to the album, 20, is a good example of this. The echoing drums and the moody synth create a pretty powerful atmosphere, I have to say, and it has this sort of like early 2010s nostalgia to it that really works in the song's favor. The vocals are also vibrant and hopeful on this one, really nailing the themes of the song in growing up and kind of witnessing your first foray into adulthood and basically having your heart on your sleeve as you confront it. In a way, this song both is a new beginning for not only the album, but also their lives in general. The big single, Cheeky Icy Thang, is also really fun. It actually kind of feels like a sequel to their song Run To You. The playful and bouncy beat, the off-kilter synths, that funky bass line, this one is a bop. I love the sort of talk vocals on the pre-chorus, and the vocals on the chorus itself are really catchy. The lyrics honestly don't really take themselves all that seriously. I mean, even the name of the track doesn't seem like it's trying to make some profound statement or anything like that, but it's all about having fun with the life that you were given, and it's about, living your youth to the fullest. Everything on here combines into a very confident and memorable track, and I also really like the sort of chiptune influence that's going on here, especially in that bridge. One Thing is actually another pretty unique song for the record, and for STAYC, really honing in on this sort of like high life socialite edge, especially with the camera flashes that are sampled in the beat here. The glitchy and punchy instrumental overall also again exudes this confidence that STAYC really seemed to want to project here. It actually almost sounds like a fucking Britney Spears song, which I am digging, by the way. The flows are snarky and have a lot of attitude to them, but it also relates back to the themes of growing up and how they kind of are wishing for this perfect life for themselves. In this one in particular, they're kind of hoping their life is like this perfect rom-com. That part actually also relates back to the sort of like camera socialite movie-like edge to the instrumental, which is pretty neat, and I mean, let's be honest, this track's just catchy as hell. Give It To Me also has some really slick vibes, opting for more of a sort of like Y2K, almost hip-hop, pop-oriented beats. I mean, it's punchy, it's fun, like, again, the instrumental is really good here. The vocal samples and the guitar also make for a very snappy feeling that makes the song really satisfying to listen to. The chorus is just dazzling, and I'm really loving how it's almost like a lush breakup song. Issa, Yoon, and Seeun especially really just take the song to the next level in how bittersweet it all feels. It's chill, but it's also like retro and also sort of modern. Like, this is a perfect fit for STAYC's sound. The next one, Find, is kind of like a subunit track. It only features some of the members, but honestly, it's also a pretty good one. It's really honing in on that sort of like drum and bass infused pop that's kind of popular right now, both in K-pop and abroad as well, and I gotta say, they're kind of nailing it here. The vocals are delicate and sweet, and the keys on this one provide a really nice curtain of sound that everything is kind of in front of. That acoustic guitar also really gives an intimate texture to the track, really highlighting the vocals here. It's also a really great follow-up to the themes of the previous track, with them kind of taking a look at their relationship situation and kind of wondering if this person deserves a second chance or if they should just move on with their lives. At this point though, the next few songs in the album feel kind of mundane in comparison. The instrumental on Let Me Know is very poppy and light, and the vocals are pleasant enough, but man, there is not a lot here that really separates it from any other K-pop B-side out there. I guess the chorus has this sort of like wistful airiness to it, and the muffled guitar that leads from the chorus back into the verses is kind of interesting, but that's kind of where the interesting parts of this song end. The next track, Nada, has a pretty similar problem. It's not really doing anything egregiously wrong, but it's also not really doing much of anything. Sumin's flows are really fun and are probably the highlight of this track, and I guess that chorus does have this sort of like hazy, dreamlike vibe that does capture the emptiness that they're feeling post-breakup, but, you know, that's kind of, again, all it's really doing. I wish the rest of the instrumental and the rest of the song had more elements to match the chorus's at least somewhat interesting nature. Faken picks up the pace again, making it feel a bit more lively in comparison to the previous two songs, but again, it's also not really doing anything that interesting. The instrumental still largely feels fairly flat and uneventful. Again, I don't really hate it, but it also doesn't really make me feel much of anything. It's like the instrumental wants to break free into this pop anthem, but it's just kind of unsure of what song it exactly wants to be. I guess in a way this actually does kind of fit the lyrics about being afraid of falling in love, being afraid of committing, but again, it doesn't really make for an interesting listen now, does it? In a way, I actually kind of feel like it takes inspiration from some of the more generic moments of like early 2010s pop, and it ends up not really feeling as impactful as I feel like it wants to be. The next track, Roses, is actually a solo song by Issa. It's definitely pulling from like the Ariana Grande playbook here, but unfortunately, it's also not really pulling from Ari's more interesting tracks. Those string sections actually do add a sort of like intimate and vulnerable elegance to the song overall, but the instrumental and the beat, like, there's just not really anything going on here other than the occasional guitar riff. It's moody, but it also doesn't really do much with the atmosphere that it's trying to create. Issa's vocals are still top-notch though, and I do think the skipping 2 steps and I'm losing control bridge is super catchy, and it has a nice flow to it. Luckily though, the next track, Beauty Bomb, helps get us back on track for the album's final leg. It's still not the most elaborate song out there, but I do think the sort of trap-infused pop elements that we got going on here at least make for a bit more of a driving instrumental compared to some of the other songs that I wasn't too hot on. It also adds some contemporary R&B elements to it to give it at least a bit more of an interesting edge, and the chorus especially is really nice. It has a groove to it in the swirling of the drums, samples, and vocals that's really pleasant to listen to. Seeun's flows are once again really fun, and the track has a very punchy and satisfying nature to it. It's pretty addictive overall, and the lyrical angle of comparing love to a bomb going off inside their chest is pretty fun. The song has a sort of cute and suave mix to it that at least makes it kind of interesting. Similar to how Cheeky Icy Thang was kind of a sequel to Run to You, Gummy Bear is definitely a sequel to their song Teddy Bear. However, I do think is a bit more interesting than Teddy Bear. The unapologetic bubblegum pop instrumental combined with those harsh synths actually make for a pretty interesting listen. It has an edge to it that Teddy Bear just really didn't have. The chorus has this sort of like early 2010s pop vibe to it that is a bit cheesy, but man, they own the cheese. They deliver it in a way that's actually pretty nostalgic and fun, and I think Jay also really gets to shine on this track. She does seem to flex her vocals more than at least they gave her the opportunity to on the previous songs. Describing falling in love as an addiction to sweets and making that comparison of being addicted to love is honestly also just totally on brand for STAYC. It also really fits this instrumental too. Stay With With Me sees STAYC revisiting that sort of like pop rock vibe that they were going with on YoungLove.com with the title track of that project, and they just do it even better here. The instrumental is just vibrant as hell. It has this almost like no doubt sound to it that I think is really endearing, and it also really fits this sort of like early 20s getting your first taste of adulthood vibe that they're really going for on this entire project. The chorus is super catchy, and those guitar riffs and how they mix with the synths, it's a pretty slick combo, I have to say. I also really love how each member gets a turn doing the chorus, giving this track a lot of vocal variety. The subtle bass that comes in during the bridge is also really fun and playful. This might actually be one of the best songs on the album. Flexing on My Ex kind of continues that Y2K trend, but more in like a Y2K boy band way this time, especially in that like very bouncy beat featuring the guitar and the heavy emphasis on the drums. It's pretty fun. The vocals have this sort of sunny and freeing cadence to them, enforcing the cocky vibe of the tracks overall, and really emphasizing how the best remedy for a broken heart is to basically do better than the person that wronged you. It's fairly straightforward overall, and it definitely wears its heart on its sleeve, but you know, as we approach the end of the project, I can appreciate a track like this. Finally, we have the Troublemaker, and what a fantastic song to end the project on. It has this sort of like tried and true, quirky STAYC sound, while also combining it with a funky instrumental that feels really fresh for them. It actually feels very like late 2nd gen K-pop or early 3rd gen K-pop, like something that an early Mamamoo or even Rainbow would do. That chorus is incredible, especially when the brass and the bass come together, and their vocals have never sounded better. The subtle addition of the synths and dance elements in the verses also help tie this song back to some of their early days of songs like So Bad, and I think it really works. Fitting to the themes of the record, this track also just feels so joyful and carefree. So youthful too, like this is definitely like a sort of coming of age song in a sense. I actually think this might be one of the best songs that they've released, period. Overall, for a first full-length album, I think STAYC did pretty well. There's definitely a lack of cohesion here, and the first leg and last leg, despite being pretty solid on their own, don't really like connect all that much from an instrumental standpoint. However, the overall instrumental theme of the project being very Y2K and sort of like early 2010s nostalgia, I think was done pretty well. I'm also really digging how they were more willing to play with like vocal samples and sampling in general, and also how they even managed to put in a few more like off-kilter K-pop instrumentals on here too. Despite this though, like I said, the middle of the album, that 4-song stretch starting with Find, is a noticeable lull in the album's quality. And even after that, you know, the next like 2 songs-ish after those 4 songs, while still good, they aren't up to par with the stuff from the first leg or the last leg, like last 4 or 5 songs of the project. However, the album does still pick up after that lull, and I'm also really digging the lyrical variety here too, not only being about love, but also, again, growing up and kind of facing the world as an adult. This sort of coming-of-age narrative definitely is a bit rarer in the K-pop industry, especially when a lot of companies seem to be wanting their idols to remain forever young, so, you know, I'm glad to see STAYC embracing their 20s. The album is definitely not without its faults, and it definitely is a bit inconsistent. However, I do think it's also a very genuine release from them too. All that being said, I'm feeling a light 7 on the debut album by STAYC. Of course, we just have to talk about album covers on the show, and this one's kinda you know? It actually kinda reminds me of like a P1 Harmony cover or something like that, where it's like, it's okay, but I don't really know how much it actually conveys the themes of the project. Like, this album overall is very youthful. It's definitely a coming-of-age album. And I guess, like, this sort of Shattered effect can represent the sort of, like, socialite angle of some of the earlier songs on the project, and, you know, just kind of, like, living life to the fullest, embracing your wild side, stuff like that. But, you know, from a color perspective, it's kind of bland, and I feel like maybe we could have gone a bit more in that, like, sort of Britney Spears side of things. Maybe not totally Y2K like that, but something a bit more in line with that to actually fit these coming-of-age themes on the project. Oh, and the sounds, too. The cover as it is right now, it doesn't really fit the instrumentals super well either. But of course, those are just my thoughts on this newest and debut album by STAYC. What did you guys think? Do you think this was a really good combination of what they've done before? Do you think this was a sort of natural continuation of their sound and lyrical themes? Or was this one not really doing it for you? Do you kind of miss some of their earlier stuff? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and maybe I'll change for you. I won't. And until the next one, farewell.